Is the Bible a fairy tale? Well, many people believe that the Bible is a fairy tale because the Bible shares a few similarities with fairy tales, like magical encounters, talking animals, and far-off kingdoms. So that's why many people believe the Bible is a fairy tale. However, I don't believe that the Bible is a fairy tale. And I'll give you many reasons why I don't believe that the Bible is a fairy tale. Okay? Well, first off, a fairy tale is a children's story about magical and imaginary beings and lands. Okay, that's what a fairy tale is. But the Bible is not a children's story, and the Bible does contain real human beings that are not imaginary, and places mentioned in the Bible are real places and not imaginary. Therefore, the Bible is not a fairy tale. Okay. The second reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because fairy tales are known for their happy endings. However, the Bible isn't a story that ends happily ever after. The Bible actually ends with people burning in hell. That's how the Bible ends. So, that doesn't sound like a happy ending to me. Okay, so that's the second reason why the Bible is not a fairy tale, because the Bible does not have a happy ending, and fairy tales typically have happy endings. Okay. The third reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because fairy tales are not autobiographical by nature. But the Bible is Jesus' story, so that means that the Bible is autobiographical by nature. Okay. So that's the third reason why the Bible is not a fairy tale. Okay. The fourth reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because fairy tales are intended for entertainment purposes, and the Bible wasn't intended for entertainment purposes. Okay, so that's why the Bible is not a fairy tale. The Bible is actually a useful source of God's identity, truth, purpose, and will, and the Bible is not intended for entertainment purposes. Okay, so therefore the Bible is not a fairy tale, because fairy tales typically they're intended for entertainment purposes. Okay, so the fourth reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because because fairy tales are not prophetic and they do not predict the future. However, the Bible does. Okay, the Bible predicts the future, and the Bible is prophetic. The Bible contains nearly 2,500 prophecies that were given as predictions of events to come. So that's the fifth reason why the Bible is not a fairy tale, because the Bible is actually prophetic. That means the Bible tells us it predicts the future. Typically, fairy tales don't do this. Okay, fairy tales are not prophetic and they do not predict the future. Okay, so that's why the Bible is not a fairy tale. The sixth reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because fairy tales often have a singular author, right? Fairy tales typically they have one author. However, the Bible has nearly 40 authors. Okay, and the Bible is actually a compilation of 66 individual books that make up one larger story. Okay, so so basically, the Bible has nearly 40 authors, right? So that's why the Bible isn't a fairy tale, because fairy tales typically have one author. Okay, however, the Bible has nearly 40 authors. Okay. So that was the sixth reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale. Now this is the seventh reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale. the seventh reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because fairy tales don't typically contain actual dates, places, people, or religious themes. Okay, fairy tales do not contain this, but the Bible does. The Bible speaks of many verifiable dates, locations, people, and events, along with having a religious theme. Okay, so that's the seventh reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale. Okay. Basically, the Bible has religious themes. Fairy tales obviously typically don't really have religious themes. Yeah. And the Bible also speaks of locations and people that are verifiable. So these are real locations and real people. Okay. So that's why the Bible isn't a fairy tale, because fairy tales use imaginary places and people. Okay. So the eighth reason why the Bible isn't a fairy tale is because fairy tales don't invoke spiritual emotion, but the Bible does. So that means the Bible indeed brings one to godly reverence, prayer, conviction, joy, and hope. Fairy tales typically don't do this, but the Bible sure does. Okay. Yeah, so basically the Bible invokes spiritual emotions like joy, hope, conviction, prayer. The Bible does this, but typically, fairy tales typically don't do this. Okay. So those were the 7 reasons why the Bible isn't a fairy tale. Okay. Yeah, I don't believe that to be true at all. Mainly because the Bible isn't really imaginary. It's not necessarily imaginary, because the Bible does talk about real people and their stories. The Bible also mentions real life locations or places. So I don't believe the Bible is a fairy tale. I think I don't believe that to be true. Okay. So that's the end of this. God bless everybody that will see this.